Declaration of Angel A, an exhibit in support of the Flores Agreement. I, Angel A, declare under penalty of perjury that the following is true and correct to the best of my knowledge and recollection. My date of birth is July 30th, 2004. I am 13 years old. My mother's name is, name redacted. My mother and I are from Mexico. We left Mexico to flee death threats from cartels who were demanding money from my mother. My mother and I first crossed the border on May 7, 2018. We crossed a river and immigration officers were on the other side waiting for us. The immigration officers took my mother and me to La Hielera, the icebox, in Brownsville. As soon as we got there, the officers separated me from my mother. The officers interviewed my mom and me together. They told us that they couldn't hold us together. They told me that they were going to keep my mom there in Brownsville and that they were either going to deport me or put me in a camp. I was sad. I started crying. The next day, the officers took my mom to court. About a half an hour later, they pulled me out of my cell. They didn't tell me why, and I didn't sign anything. They put me in a van and took me and another kid to the Mexican consulate, where we picked up two other kids. They took us to the middle of the bridge, and the Mexican police picked us up there in the middle. The Mexican police took our information down, and then they took us to a juvenile detention facility, DIF, in Matamoros. They put us in a room and took our photo and our information. We went to see a doctor and a psychologist. From there, they put us in a dormitory where there were about 6 other boys from Central America. They were waiting to be deported. I was the youngest. I was able to bathe, and they gave me food and clothes. They gave us a chat about drugs and STDs. In that place, they hold kids who help people cross the border, and those children use drugs. No one explained to me how long I would be there, but they just told me I would be there until my mom or dad came to pick me up. Otherwise, I would be sent to be adopted. I was very afraid. When my mom came to pick me up, I was so relieved that I cried. I was so happy to see her. My mother and I were still afraid for our lives, so we had to cross the border again on May 16, 2018. When we crossed the border, we were kidnapped by armed men who held us in a house with about 120 other people for 8 days. It was very scary. I didn't know what was going to happen to my mom and me. Eventually, the police came and shot the door of the house down so that we could all leave. They put us in a van and drove us about half an hour to the Rio Grande. The officers took us back to La Hielera. They separated me from my mother again. I was very scared because I thought I might be deported away from her again. After 2 days, the officers drove my mom and me to La Perrera, the dog cage, in McAllen. When we got there, they separated me from my mom again. When we arrived at La Perrera, they made us sit on some benches. They gave us food, a cushion, and a metal blanket. They put me in a corner of the cell and separated me from the other boys because I am Mexican. We were all together in the same cell, but the guards made me and the other Mexican boys sit under the vent where it was coldest. Every day, the guards told the boys in my cell that they were going to be adopted and that they would never see their parents again, that we were the property of the United States because we were on their territory. The ones saying all the mean things were wearing gray. The ones wearing green would sometimes comfort children or ask why they were crying, but not the ones in gray. One of the ones in gray made sure that the Mexican boys always stayed in our corner and never were able to sit near the other children, even when we were all together for lunch. He told us not to bother the other children or start fights because all Mexicans are like that. He treated everyone but the Mexicans well. I felt I was being discriminated against. I was told I would be deported by an official, and it didn't matter that I came with my mom. The guards were always waking us up in the middle of the night to do the list. The ones who didn't want to get up, the guards would kick. There were children as young as 5 in the cell, but the guards would shake them hard to wake them up. The atmosphere in the cell was really hard. The children would cry constantly. Sometimes the mood would lighten, they would put on a movie, but then a guard would come by and say that the children would be sent away to live in a foster home and never see their parents again. They called the consulate, who asked for my information, where I was going, and why. I asked him why this call was happening. The consulate said it was so I could be deported. In La Perera, I could see that some of the other boys got to spend time with their parents, but only boys from Central America. I never got to speak with my mother, nor did any of the other boys from Mexico. My mother and I were at La Perera for 6 days. I don't know why we were there for so long. Every day I saw people leave, and I didn't understand why we were still stuck there. No one explained to me what was going on. After 6 days, my mother and I were brought here to Dili on May 30th, 2018. I don't know why we have been here for so long. Last week, my mom and I signed a paper to be released, and my family bought us tickets. But then we found out that we couldn't leave after all. We have been here for another 8 days. When I found out we couldn't leave yet, it was really hard on me. It is making it difficult for me to sleep at night. I just want to know what is going to happen to us. Today, I found out that we received a positive, credible fear determination. Soon, we will be released to go live with a friend in Houston. I am excited to get out of here and get past this nightmare. I, Angel A., swear under penalty of perjury that the above declaration is true and complete to the best of my abilities. This declaration was provided in Spanish, a language in which I am fluent, and was read back to me in Spanish. June 29th, 2018.